tell you more about Saul and the evening, it's really my great pleasure to introduce the person who put this whole 2 nights together, who curated the shows, and who's been a good friend to Saul as well in making all of this happen. Please join me in welcoming Matt Doyle.
Hi, everybody. So before I get to talking about Saul, I just wanted to go down the list because, thank you, Adam, for that introduction. But there are a lot of people that were involved in making this screening series happen. I just wanted to go through a couple of them. For tonight's screening at Chin's Push, I'd like to thank Lydia Glenn Murray for letting us use this beautiful backyard. Rare opportunity to see the work here. Over at LA Film Forum, Adam Hyman, Sean Batten, and Madison Brookshire, who's going to be running the projection tonight. He's a projectionist. Which couldn't happen without them. Lord knows I don't know how to run one of those things. I don't, seriously. Over at Veggie Cloud, Courtney Stevens and Kate Wolf were very, very helpful in sort of starting this whole thing off. It really, the impetus for the whole screening series was a desire to screen video work at Veggie Cloud, and they were the first people to kind of get the ball rolling on both of the screenings. So that was, essential. And tonight, Chase Niesner helped me quite a bit in setting all the chairs up and things like that. And I'd also like, there is no way that the screening could have taken place without Saul generously lending us his personal copies of all of these films, because we were working on no budget. And so with the exception, I'd like to thank Filmmakers Co-op in New York City for express mailing us the first film we're going to see this evening, Notes of an Early Fall, which is, there are only actually 2 prints out there right now. One of them's at Cal Arts. Steve Anker bought it from Canyon Cinema. And the other one was at Filmmakers Co-op, and they expedited us out to us because Saul misplaced it. Yeah, so... So I'm going to read something real quick, just really brief. Now, you know what, whatever. There is the thing that I wrote online when I was writing the program notes up for this. The first film, I really like this story that Saul has in his artist statement about the first film he made that he was happy with. It's called Salt of the Sea. He made it in 1965. And as Saul writes about it, he says that he was out, well, you know what, I will actually, I'm not going to do it justice because I'm a little bit. So let me just read this. Sorry about that. So Saul went out sailing with some friends and had brought a regular 8mm camera with him and started filming. One of my friends jumped from the boat to a buoy, climbed to 8 feet on top of it, and said, "Saul, you can get some great shots from here." So I jumped, didn't make it, and sunk into the water clutching my camera. The water was warm compared to the air since it was a cold fall day. It was like being embraced by the sea. I thought I was dead. However, I wound up bobbing to the surface, clambered onto the buoy, still clutching my camera, and was able to jump back into the moving boat. Cold, humbled, my camera ruined, I returned home and sent the film to be processed. I wrote a script, intending to have the actors reenact the event, but I couldn't find anyone willing to jump into the ocean. The footage came back and was mainly abstract images of swirls of magenta and turquoise, which I spent a month editing. I edited in terms of rhythm, shaping the abstractions by cutting. There were glimpses of sun, sea, and sky moving finally toward an image of my friend on top of the buoy, shot from the moving boat and then whiting out. I felt it was much closer to making use of the experience than the 16mm narrative film I had written. And to me, I mean, origin stories are tough, but there's something nice about this story because I like that Saul uses the term that there was something closer to making use of the experience than writing a film that reenacted this series of events. And I think that a lot of Saul's film is about diving into the water and just this kind of point where it's pushed right up against reality. And I think that the films speak for themselves. I could talk about them, but Saul's a great friend, and I'm just really so happy that he's out here. to show his work. So without further ado, I'd like to give it up for Saul Levine.
So, very happy to be here. I want to thank all those people that Matt named, especially Lydia. This is one of the most beautiful and certainly the nicest smelling space I've ever shown my work. Matt, you already heard my words spoken by Matt. So I'm not going to say too much, except to say that it's true. Around this time, I abandoned the narrative. I abandoned thinking about films as narrative, and especially the narrative apparatus, and actually became hostile to it, partly under the influence of people like Brakhage, Mencken, Maya Deren, and Jack Smith, who really amazed me when I met him in New York. And when I saw his work, I said, holy smokes, you can have all that great stuff of costume, acting, makeup, bizarre things, and you don't have to have a plot. So you'll see in these films, you know, you may find a story here or there, but that's not the point. I actually am a failed writer. I tried to write plays, novels, short stories, and poems, and in particularly poetry. I thought that I would be an awful person to make films. You see my head shake. I have no sense of organization. I was told, up until I started, I had no visual intelligence. My second grade teacher, of all the art, ripped up my drawing in front of the whole class. I didn't draw correctly for second grade. So I mean, I came to this with a, but I figured, you know, I would do the best I could with what I have. And also when I saw Maya Deren's At Land, choreography for the camera, and Viking Egman's Symphony Diagonal, I realized there was a whole other world. I love going to the movies. I love all kinds of film, documentaries, whatever. But I never saw anything that I wanted to make. I mean, I thought about being a narrative filmmaker, but I totally did not want to make love stories, gangster films, musicals, or whatever. So when I saw Maya Deren's work, she had a similar epiphany with film, that what she had been trying to do in poetry, you could do in film. And I realized not that I was going to make films like Maya Deren, who twisted the narrative apparatus at first and then did a lot of other things. Actually, it's at the end of That Land, there's a shot of Maya Deren running down the beach, and you see these footsteps. And one of the meanings of that shot is, from now on, you're all running after me in my footsteps. But there's a lot of other meanings. And I mean, also the time that it's going to, footsteps in sand. Anyway, so I want to shut up and let you watch the films. I want to say this. Before the show, I said the projectionists were the stars, right? Because their performance will allow, but I'm going to now say another secret. You're the stars. You are the last apparatus. Whatever you see is the film. And I come from the tradition of filmmaking that demands that you be an active participant in this work. If you're lazy, and you can turn this stuff off. Okay, who's the loser? Not me. Have a great show.
2 or 3 quick housekeeping notes. A restroom is inside and immediately to the right. The cables are all loose to the various electrical and sound places, so definitely keep an eye out for that. They're basically running up the center and then eventually into the house and to the speakers. So be careful of not tripping. And yes, everything tonight is being screened from film, Super 8 and 16 millimeter. There's 2 projectors, so be aware of those. Be aware of your heads if you're in front of them, because you might end up with your shadow in the film. And there will be lapses or short gaps between each film as we change films over and so forth. And so once again, please enjoy the show, and we'll see you after with Saul for discussion. Thank you. Thank you all, and once again, please filmmakers Saul. So I'm just going to ask a few, and then any questions that you all might have as well. I guess anything, so it's a fair game. But well, let's just start with, how did you choose to work with these small media? Probably a lot of people here have never actually had a chance to work with Super 8 or regular.
Can you speak up a little bit? We can't hear you back here.
Okay.
Sorry.
So thought we'd start with, since probably many of you have not had a chance to work with Super 8 or regular 8 film, it's like, how did he come to that as the medium he would film in for much of his career? I mean, now he's also working in video, but let's start there.
Well, I actually learned 16 millimeter filmmaking in night school at NU, but I had before this, I mean, I had already had my epiphany in seeing that land, and I had a feeling the kind of films I were going to make weren't marketable. So I felt I should work as cheaply as possible, since I didn't have much money. So I actually started with regular 8, had the ability to do as many superimpositions as you want, because you were able to turn the rolls over. So in any case, I shot a lot of superimpositions as a way of learning and practicing the camera and annihilating the kind of perspective, normal image that the camera is designed to give. So, and the possibility of making metaphors with overlays and whatever. So, I mean, and although if you notice, I'm not all that big. At the time, most 60 millimeter cameras, I felt more comfortable with regular 8, and I wanted to also explore. I felt drawn, as you can see in this work, to working from what's around you. And like the last film's called Daily Camera. And that's a lot easier practice with, I started in regular 8. I also loved the regular 8 image because it had, it had a very small hole, so it had a large depth of field. And unlike Super 8, it had registered frames. So it gave you, I was really drawn to, you can see in Note to Patty, I was drawn to the quality of the image. And then I got into Super 8 because I wanted to work with sound. I had worked on Marjorie Keller's sound films and some other people at Dan Barnett. And I wanted to do my own. I was interested again in speech, which you would see more of tomorrow night if you come. But you can see that a little in here. When I was a child, I had really bad speech problems, and I had to learn to speak. And so for me, how a person speaks is part of who they are. And so I tried to make, I wanted to have the ability to do sync sound. I have to say, I felt also surrounded by people who I thought were deeper into sound and musical forms than me. But again, I was very interested in speech and sync sound. And I actually love how in Super 8, it's a single system. So every time you made a cut, the sound is ahead of the image, 18 frames. So you had to like make two decisions at the same time. And that became a formal way of working. You're usually always making elements.
Now I'll have a little complimentary. Now we just did a little glass of scotch there. So as you learned how to work with those, did you find, in what ways did you find what you were interested in filming change?
Oh, well, if you notice, one of the first sound films I made, Notes of an Early Fall, part of that title is referring to the idea that film is primarily a visual media, and that's how I saw it at first. I love that the Maya Deren and Beacon Yeglin films I mentioned were silent. And it was such a blessing. I'll tell you, I love sound films, and you can see I make them, but there are more very good films are ruined by bad sound than anything else. That's not, I don't know that that's so I did think of it as a kind of fall, but on the other hand, I also, I discovered that sound had a lot to do with space, and that freaked me out a little. That was a discovery, but also I knew I wanted to do this kind of collaging of sound kind of things that you especially see in this thing. And this was a very good media to do that with. I had made, there are many of these very densely cut films that are silent, and I realized I could also extend that by including sound, and especially including words. And I started, I'm totally into words, so I also wanted to work with words. And I felt sync sound was a bit unexplored.
Is the last piece we saw a sync sound conversation with your filming of the moon and the...
Yeah.
And what is the other...
And the woman is there, Pele Lowe, who's been a frequent collaborator of mine. and I of hers through the years. So she's there. This is a sync sound thing. You're hearing what happened. And I actually meant to film it earlier, slightly earlier than but my batteries ran out. So but I love that it's the start, you know, because, and Pele loved it. It made her more comfortable to play.
Just on a tangent on that, I never quite got what the other thing you were going to from the moon was.
Pele.
I mean, the set of lights?
Oh, the set of lights, it's the street.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like that, I like the abstraction. And, you know, I mean, it's kind of like Marie Mencken and Brackage, you know, used that kind of imagery a lot. Also, noir.
And what about the whole idea of making films that are notes? Talk about the idea of like, are notebooks, diaristic, just thoughts that come to you, or what range of things for you fall under the idea of notes, that's what a film could be?
Well, I actually early on, I wanted to have well, first of all, I said I was a blocked writer. The last kind of writing I did was to write notes or letters to people. And I started to include visual elements. And for those people who had regular 8 projectors, I sometimes sent them a loop. And you, in fact, a film that's not called the note, but is the big stick. We didn't see it tonight, but that film started as that kind of note to someone. And so my sense of notes had less to do with diary at first than this personal thing. I resist talking about my films as diaries because, first of all, I'm not that consistent. I leave large areas of what happens to me on a daily level out, you know, but not in any meaningful way. So I'm not like I'm not trying to be a diarist. I'm trying to explore. In fact, your question, my answers, the 13 notes I've made, are, you know, because I'm interested in language, I'm cognizant of the musical thing, notes, and I refer, like I have a film called Whole Note, that partly refers to that, you know. The idea of taking notes and of using film as a note-taking media. I mean, I guess I was drawn to the open-endedness, and also, I mean, also the idea that all of my films, but these films in particular, are kind of notes in the bottle that I'm throwing out into time, space, wherever they'll wind up, and disappear.
That's beautiful. So they weren't like thought of also, I mean, there's other, I mean, Ed Pincus's diaries or whatever, not sort of any sort of conversation with that, or were there other filmmakers who you felt you were in dialogue with?
I mean, if I were in dialogue with Ed Pincus, it's more like an argument. I mean, I know Ed Pincus, or I knew Ed Pincus, rest in peace.
Or let's just go differently. What other filmmakers might you?
Well, I mean, people have pointed out, you know, on the level we're talking about now, Brackage, Meckes, Carolee Schneemann, like say Fuses, has a diaristic element and an element of dailiness, but it's also a film about the Vietnam War, which is going on, which people, because of their initial shock at seeing gigantic genital images, right, outside of pornography, they don't always recognize. So, I mean, I would say, you know, in that kind of film, Marie Menken, I mean, really the whole, a lot of the people in the early American avant-garde, I feel I'm carrying that kind of tradition, but in my own voice. I mean, and also this idea, I'm very conscious of the kind of cultural criticism of people who like go somewhere else and film cultures and exoticize them. And so I'm filming, but you know, I mean, I found out that actually it's a that you do that anyway. You become an alien when you're behind the camera. So I'm not like defending myself. I'm not saying I'm better, but I deliberately, I mean, I was, because I live in Boston, I'm in a kind of semi-hostile conversation with a lot of the documentary tradition, which Ed Pincus is part of, or Ricky Leacock. I mean, and these are people, you don't bother to have arguments with people who are just stupid or who have nothing to talk about. These are serious people who I share ideals with. You know, I mean, but both of them, for example, I think, were just as interesting. I mean, and I chose small gauge because it's a democratic medium. I mean, like, even more so the selfie. You know, I thought that you could make great work or very good work with small media. Leacock invented the Super 8 double system sound system and was a brilliant inventor. But on what is truth and what is reality and what are formal ways of seeing things, I'm in argument with these guys quite a bit. And also, not just in film, I used to, you know, we talked about these things when we bumped into each other. But I would say, you know, like Mekas, you know, Mekas calls his big work journal, diary, notebook, and journals, or something of those three. But it, you know, you see some. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I come also from the understanding we were talking about yesterday. You never get it all. You miss half of it, right? When the cameras are going on and off, something happens in that off. Anyway, it's always afterwards. It's like you're hearing me later. By the time you hear me, I'm someone else tonight.
And should we talk about the film which was different from the others tonight? I mean, the Light Leak series and the idea behind that for you. And I mean, the images are so beautiful, but how do you come to them, and why have you pursued those for some of your works?
Well, I had been filming skies a lot, and I felt I needed some kind of flicker to connect stuff. And so I remember, so I did this thing where I flooded the camera with light, so that I had done this in 1965 with a friend of mine with a Bolex. So I had some idea of what it would look like, and you can see actually the flicker and report I believe, is done in a similar way. What I did in Bruce Conner, I think, took the actual lens out of the camera and just poured light into the camera. And then when you click it off, what's in front of the frame will be white. Then if you cover it, the dark frames are not only dark, but the light spills over. And so when I did this, I discovered these other images appearing, right? And I got into that. And almost from the very beginning of film, I've tried to make films, and this is what we didn't quite get to in notes, that were improvisation. What is improvisation in film? It's a very unimprovisational medium. I mean, there are lots of ways you could approach that. But, so, I've thought about that a lot. There's a film, On the Spot, where I just filmed from one circle about this fire pit on a farm I was living on temporarily, and filmed anything I could see in this kind of 180-degree dome. This is a kind of extension of that, but it's also the death of photochemical film kind of hangs over it, because I'm thinking about what can't you do digitally? You cannot do this digitally. And also this is actually an extension of all those things I've been learning all along. So I wanted to think about how you could make marks on film with light and make rhythms out of that. Actually, the earlier ones were more abstract than this, and this one we're starting to come back to images. And in fact, this one, I'd never have said this publicly or privately very much, but this was the second time I was in Boulder. Some of it isn't shot in Boulder, but a lot of it is. And the first time I was there, Brakhage was living, and this time he wasn't. So for me, and for people who know Brakhage's work, there are many echoes of Brakhage in it, partly because you can't avoid this in Boulder. He kind of pissed on all the trees like he did in film technique. So, I mean, a lot of the light-lit stuff he did too. So, anyway, I mean, I was somewhat, I was haunted or felt the absence of him a lot, and there are more than one quote of his work, so it's not quite so different, or so. But also it's a little bit Brakhagian in that this is kind of the, he was interested in in all the ways that film could be articulate, and I mean, I don't approach that, but so this is my attempt to try and find the media, try and use film and people use improvised music, except it's a solo, and the other side of the light licks is I'm a stone atheist. Although I've made 2 ghost films that I think are true ghost films, but I read a lot. I love reading the accounts of visionary mystics, I mean, I don't believe in the whole supernatural superstructure that they have, but I find that is very analogous to my inner life. I mean, I'm very interested in what goes on in everybody's mind's eye and everyone's consciousness. And I got into film really like a lot of people in my generation, or even before. I mean, Sam Fuller is an example of a narrative filmmaker who's totally interested in consciousness too, and representations of consciousness. So these things, they're not like trying to be literal translations of that, but they're acknowledgments. I've had visions my whole life. I don't believe they come from anywhere but me, and cultural impositions. So so they're not quotations, but I'm acknowledging. I'm breaking from the. I'm thinking about other kinds of representation of things and rhythm and light. But actually I'm doing that in most, after long silence too.
Well, what ways do you think that moving imagery works best to convey your consciousness?
Oh, well, I think we have consciousness in time. And we also, our consciousness is actually on and off. It's, the unity of the world is an illusion. That's produced by our representation of the world is akin to how film works. On many different levels, we're putting together things, but they're actually more like stills than moving, and it's an illusion of continuity. It's a pretty good illusion, aren't we all in it? But some of you are somewhere else, right?
In your mind,
Yes, exactly.
At that point, since he's also brought you all in, do any of you have any questions or comments right now, please?
Neil and I were wondering if you're still shooting film. You seem it's a democratic medium when you started, and it certainly is not. It's incredibly expensive to shoot film, especially sound.
Well, I don't. Yes, I'm brought up against that issue. Well, first of all, I could stop shooting right now and work in film till I die. I have a lot of footage. I take your point. I mean, it's democratic if you approach it in a craft DIY way, but you're right to think that this is more democratic in the sense that it's more common and equal. I mean, but it's still a lot, it's still not everyone, right? So, and then you have to know what to do with it. Good question. Yeah, it's a good question. But okay, my answer, Jen, I do have an answer. I put my work on Vimeo for free. So, everything except the first film, if you want to check out again, you can watch on Vimeo. I could give you a card, go to my website, saullevine.com, go to Flickr, Saul Levine, and you not Flickr, Vimeo, and you can watch. I have Flickr things too, so you can go to them and see them for free. Most filmmakers don't do that. Most filmmakers think they gain something by withholding it, and some of them do. But I'll tell you the truth. I'm not losing anything. It's not like people are beating down the doors to rent my films or put them in film festivals or anything. I do okay, but you know.
But it raises an interesting question, though, because in your films, I mean, in some of them, you're dealing very specifically, as you mentioned, with light leaks. In one of the things you are doing is investigating things that are unique to the photochemical film, whether it be making apparent the material of the splice, whether it be coming up with a photochemical light registration. And so, of course, there is this underlying premise in the experimental film world that these things also should be experienced in that way because that's the way that it's best interacted with. In which case, those films of yours, perhaps, one could argue should be withheld from Vimeo because you're not really seeing the film anyway.
Well, another way to look at it is, and this is where the cell phone, we come back to the cell phone. I actually enjoy at Porter Square looking at my films, waiting for the fucking red line to come. When it says it's going to come in 2 minutes for 15. So yes, that's true. You've seen the films in one of their meant forms with a projector, and the Vimeo thing is just a replication translation. But I would argue that it's people in Uzbekistan and me in the Porter Square subway T where I couldn't, have the same access. It's global. And I mean, I do. People hit on how much they watch, who knows, but from all over the world. And so I feel I have a whole other audience online. So it's not like I'm ignoring that practice, and I actually think I should be using my cell phone more than I do. I filmed a pretty good thing of one of my, Daphne Moreau did a great performance at her graduation show in the Bacalar Gallery, and I filmed it with my camera, and then I lost the camera before I transferred it.
Questions, thoughts, comments? Well, one thing that was brought up, is there one out there that I can't? There we go. Yes.
First, thank you so much for bringing these films and sharing them with us. It's a real treat. I think one thing that struck me watching these grouped together was how important the concept of play was, both in terms of the kind of activity that you're filming and your own interaction with it through the medium, as well as this concept of improvisation, down to the act of like playing a record or just playing music. It seems to be something that animates all of this work, but in a very specific kind of unstructured sort of play way. And some of the way that you're talking about the work, and the action of the projector makes me think of just the kinds of, peekaboo kind of play, which in a way is very different to some of the other ways that play and game have been used as cinematic metaphors or something. So I'm just curious how you think about the concept of play and how it continues to animate your work as you move from film to digital.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you gave a very good answer. It's something that runs. Certainly, there are playgrounds. There are areas of play. There are also work.
I was thinking that, like, it reminds me of Mark Lepore's, like, the play equaling work.
Jen brings up a filmmaker who's a lot on my mind because I'm also a programmer, and I'm showing his work in his, I think, restored work.
It's Mark Lepore, L-A-P-O-R-E.
he made a film called Work and Play about those cultural concepts in the Sudan. And he's actually in Notes After Long Silence, and he filmed the scene in me in Groove to Groove where I'm hopping across the kitchen in a frog dance. And in Notes After Long Silence, I forgot that this was true, that I literally intercut him with the shot. He's putting on a coat in San Francisco, but he's walking around the pond in Lincoln, Massachusetts, and those things are intercut. So that's my idea of play. But I would also say that there's also an idea that in my work, there's work.
Mm-hmm. There's another hand over here. Yeah.
Just a quick one about the rhythmic element of the splices you're using. This is Smith splices, yes?
Yes. For the most part, yes.
And that gives that fantastic variation on the edges and the whole bubbles.
If you happen to go to Vimeo, go watch the big stick. It's weird, that's pushed a lot, but it's great in Notepad.
How did people first receive that? Seeing the splices in the middle of the picture and so on.
People complained about a lot of other things, actually. Some people are bothered. I mean, I was deliberately speaking to those people who had bothered, who were seeing it from a film production point of view, and it's in line with, you know, contemporaries like George Landau, or we were talking about the great film Near the Big Chocolate, where you're showing what isn't shown. All films, all 35 millimeter films are put together with cement splices, which are buried either by A and B rolling or between, if there's enough room. And in 16, they do things, and Brackage used to put a black frame sometimes between the cut. And so, I mean, I thought I used this in that. I mean, people wear jeans. They wear the stitching, and there are rivets on them. You see them. Sometimes, so for me, it's another mark on the film, and it's an opportunity. Actually, one of the things I noticed in that land is that Maya Deren isn't doing quite what I'm doing, but she sometimes was using a half-frame splicer in 16, which produces a little image from the last frame. And then I said, wow, this woman is such a great editor. How come she makes splices like this? Because I didn't, how come they look like that? And I didn't understand. And then I understood, and then I liked it. And then I heard Brackage describe Marie Mencken's Hurry, Hurry, how she used splices as rhythm in it. And then I saw a friend of mine, Mike Jacobson, made a similar kind of use of that, and then I fell in the water. The story you heard at the beginning, and that film was, that's the film where I first started using the splice mark as a mark, as something I wanted people to see.
And based on the last question, well, any others right now for any of you, please? Yeah.
Well, I noticed there were scratches in some of the films, and I started to wonder about the splices, if maybe they've changed visually over time. Have the films changed at all since you've made them and as you've shown them?
Oh yeah. I mean, do you mean every print, no matter what kind of film it is different every time it's projected. Okay? And so the question in my films are where the mark was made. whether it was a in-camera scratch, a scratch in the editing and printed, or a scratch made maybe even tonight. And the answer is all of the above.
Was the film that was heavily scratched, they looked, was it optically printed so the scratches were running faster? Because it looked like they were running faster in different scratches.
Yes, that may be true. Yes, I think you might be distinguishing the generation in any way. Because these films are all, even the Super 8, beside the first one, they all were optically printed, actually. In order to, they were blown up to 16. The Super 8 sound films, except for Notes of an Early Fall, were actually blown up to 16, printed on 35mm film. This is how they made the Super 8 prints for airplanes. And printed on this very strong ester stock with good stripes. That process, then video came along, the airplane, you know, the kind of filmmaker I am, and this is something all avant-garde filmmakers are scavengers or coyotes on the edge, eating in the junkyard of the industry. Nobody was making films or equipment for us, specifically. So that whole printing process disappeared. In fact, Notes After Long Silence would have been longer if I didn't know that that was happening, and that I probably would only I got some of the last prints made. And then also the sound transfer, then what happened is you couldn't get good sound stripes. So a film Pele Lowe and I made together, you can't see as a film, called Work actually, because we never could, you can see the original, but we were never able to make a successful Super 8 print because we couldn't get the sound stripes.
So can you say the names of them in order that we saw them tonight?
Yes, I think I can.
Yeah. And for those of you who missed it, there was also program notes by the door, which probably not enough, but nonetheless.
The first film was shown in 2 parts, and that's Notes of an Early Fall. The second film was Note to Patty. The third film was Notes After Long Silence. Oh, yeah, Note to Patty was the next film, and then the next film was Bopping the Great Wall of China Blue. After that was Groove to Groove, and the last film was called Light Licks. No, I didn't. But Light Licks came after a few tunes going out, right?
Yeah.
So Light Licks, Daily Camera, and then Crescent, which was the last one. I loved that it was outdoors. I mean, I actually, something you haven't, I mean, I appreciated all of the ambience quite a bit tonight. It made me very happy. It was, to me, appropriate.
I know, we even arranged that there were no helicopters during the which is a very common thing. I mean, I think at this point, we should probably wrap it up so everybody could adjourn for a moment. For projecting, because it went pretty well. And Saul will be back tomorrow night with Matt at Veggie Cloud on, what's the address again?
Tomorrow night, I think it's 5210, it's Veggie Cloud, 5210 Monte Vista. Let me double check that real quick.
Yep. So that's 520 Monte Vista.
Yeah, it
At
is.
same time
It is
area.
5210 Monte Vista. We're going to be showing a film called Dream Lover Dream, which is a world premiere. It was shot in 2015 on video. And driven with the recently incarcerated filmmaker and artist Joe Gibbons. Film from 2002 that's part of Saul's Driven series.
Yep. Joe's a really remarkable artist who recently tried robbing a bank with a video camera. So he's in Rikers, and you'll hear more about that tomorrow. But thank you once again, Saul. Thank you all for coming.